Am I on? I am? Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, it's so good to see you all again. Remember, I shared on Shabbat, and 4 minutes later, this section of the city lost power. As we say in Hebrew, no bueno. Not at all. It's now twice in 2 days that I was able to make it up the steps without the help of Jill Biden. So I'm very thrilled. I can make a lot of comments, but that's not what tonight is for. Monday nights are usually the time for questions and answers, and we'll actually get to them. But over the last 10 presentations that I've given prior to coming here to Beit Tehila, I basically came up with a laundry list of things that just about everyone was asking. I'm sure we'll have additional questions. I'm hoping my voice will hold up. The direction that I was going in the other day with the Barry White voice did not stick. This morning, I kept having my voice crack, and I thought the Pee Wee Herman approach would be less than beneficial both to you and to I. Okay, so let's jump right in. In America, unless you're reading the Israeli news, and by the way, I strongly recommend that, and please don't tell me that you're watching this from TBN and this from that. No. If you want to watch that, go for it. But you need to read the actual news from Israel. Not some organization's take on things, but the actual news. I-24, Times of Israel, not connected to the New York Times, jpost.com, ynetnews.com, and Israel National News. 5 sites. You don't have to look at them every hour and a half like I do. But one of the things that people are not catching is the larger war. First, of course, this is all a war against Iran's proxies. This is Iran. The largest, strongest proxy of Iran is Hezbollah, which basically dominates the entire country of Lebanon. We fought 2 wars in Lebanon. One in the 80s against what was called then the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, and in 2006 against Hezbollah. And by the way, we did not do well in that war. Hezbollah formed in 1982. For those of you who may remember, in 1983, there were U.S. Marines based in and around Beirut trying to help things after the Lebanese Civil War. Hezbollah drove trucks laden with explosives and killed a very large number of U.S. Marines. It was in 1983. Things have not gotten better. Hezbollah has fired over 5,000 missiles at us in this war. Now again, the war is against Hamas. Hamas invaded. But Hezbollah, by the next day, October 8th, began regularly firing. There were drone attacks. We've lost people. And much of northern Israel has gone up in flames. We have 83,000 people that we evacuated from their homes. And in effect, Israel has ceded sovereignty of much of northern Israel, giving Hezbollah, which hasn't crossed the border, a security zone. Now, October 8th and 9th, our Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, said that Hezbollah was the far more dangerous enemy and we needed to strike them first. Hezbollah first. Sorry, I'm losing my glasses here. And then Hamas. He was overruled by our prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and we are now in a situation which is extremely dangerous. The war against Hamas has been very tough, and we already find ourselves in a situation where we've had way too many tanks and armored vehicles severely damaged. Again, Hamas has been preparing for this for years through their amazing array of tunnels, smuggling in weapons through Egypt directly from Iran. You keep hearing Netanyahu and others in my government talk about, well, if full-scale war breaks out, we're going to restore Lebanon to the dark ages. Ain't going to happen. It's interesting. Israel was most successful when we used to talk little and do a lot. The more Israel talks, when I say Israel, our government, the more our government talks about what we're going to do, the less that ever happens. I do not know how we're going to restore those 83,000 people to their homes. Don't know. We are not going to wage a full-scale ground war in Lebanon if we can help it, which again follows the consistent policy of the Israeli government, of the governments of the last 20-plus years, which basically kicks the can down the road for someone else to deal with in the future. There will be a major war with Hezbollah no longer than 2 to 5 years from now. That's my prediction. It's not a prophecy. I could be wrong. I can't imagine it going on much further. They have more than 150,000 advanced missiles, many of them with GPS guidance on them. So if they wanted from Lebanon to take out the apartment buildings to the right of the building I live in and to the left, but leave my building alone, they can do that. Our vaunted Iron Dome system cannot compete with the incoming array of missiles. We know that. We are not prepared for this war. We don't have our electric grid secured. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm giving you guys a lot of bad news. As someone, the people here and the people listening online love Israel with all their heart. I'm here to tell you the real deal. Iran has been very successful in creating what they call a ring of fire around us. They have armed proxies for years, and as I shared with you the other day, Israel is currently fighting a war on 7 fronts. Iraq, which never quite adopted the democracy that America was bringing to it, is an Iranian puppet. And I just read news from Israel just about an hour ago, and they're already threatening Saudi Arabia because they believe that Saudi Arabia and Israel are working together in some kind of partnership, at least for the future. Let's leave that and move on a little bit. Everyone wants to know, how were the attacks on October the 7th possible? Because we've all believed that the Israel Defense Forces, Tzahal, what in English is called the IDF, is like amazing. Superman. Our military leadership needs to be replaced, and they are guilty of being arrogant, being overconfident, and having a narrative in their head that Hamas was never going to do what they were able to do so easily. We built a fence that cost $1 billion. Supposed to be impregnable. And the purpose of the fence was actually to stop incursions of groups of 3, 4, 5 terrorists. No one ever conceived that there could be several thousand terrorists all hitting it at the same time and sending guys by air in gliders and landing on the sea. Never came into anyone's thought. In the same way that until 9/11, no one in the United States government ever thought that terrorists would hijack planes and fly them into buildings. Never thought of it. Why they don't take people who can creatively come up with the what ifs, it has always astounded me. Instead of agreeing with the doctrine, come up with, hey, that's all well and good, but what if someone does X? So we've got this amazing fence. We had this amazing fence. And they had sensors on top and automated machine gun turrets. Impregnable. Never dawned on anyone that a drone could drop an incendiary device and take out the electronics. Never dawned on anyone that either a drone or an RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, from a distance could take out the machine gun emplacements. And then they just use bulldozers and push the fence down. What's shocking is that most of our military leadership is not resigned. I think they should be indicted for treason. We had all these young 19-year-old spotters who were watching all of this in the weeks before, seeing Hamas terrorists come and practice scaling the fence, practice laying explosives, and they reported on this. But we had convinced ourselves that allowing money from Qatar in was going to buy off Hamas. And it's beyond stunning that it's almost 50 years to the day of all the intelligence failures of the Yom Kippur War to October 7th, 2023. October 6th, 1973 to October 7th, 2023. The losses would have been far greater by multiples of 3 or 4 if it wasn't for the heroism of young men and women in Israel. There are people who got up, heard the news, grabbed their weapon, got in a car, and drove down. Think of it. Danger was beyond belief, and they run towards it. People went with their cars, bringing survivors from the Nova Dance Festival. And it's interesting. The general feeling in Israel before the war was that people generally didn't have that good a feeling about our young generation. Our version of the TikTok generation. What are these kids going to do? And they have shown themselves to be unbelievable. I mean, really, it's just totally beyond belief. And their heroism on a daily basis in Gaza. Now, you read the death totals, but what you don't see in the English language media are those who have been maimed, mutilated, and crippled for life. Those who lost eyes, those who've lost limbs. The sacrifices are beyond belief. Israel will be a very, very different society going forward. I pray that our military leadership does a full house cleaning, but the problem is all the younger generals, and again, we have a very young army to begin with, In Israel, like when you're 50 years old, you're like booted out the side door. But they've all learned from each other. Now, you have to understand when these mistakes began being made. In the early 2000s, Ehud Barak was our prime minister. Barak was Israel's most decorated soldier. He had this idea that for all future wars, Israel was going to be able to win it based on air power alone. The Israel Air Force is arguably plane for plane, pilot for pilot, if not the best, among the best air forces in the entire world. Okay? So along comes the war with Hezbollah in 2006. Hezbollah crossed the border, captured a bunch of Israelis. We didn't realize that they had already been killed, and a war of a little more than 30 days ensued. And we found, shockingly, that we could not win by air power alone, that we had to enter southern Lebanon. And there was also, our chief of staff at the time, you got to laugh because you can't believe it. The moment he heard that Hezbollah had crossed the border and captured Israeli soldiers, he got on the phone with his stockbroker and sold all of his stock. That's not the guy you want to be running your armed forces. Okay, let's jump ahead. So we saw that it was a false doctrine. But still, Israel downsized the number of tank divisions, downsized the number of artillery divisions, and the best part is we decided we didn't have to manufacture rockets and munitions to the degree that we had been because we could always buy them from our American friends. Oops. So this is now 18 years later, and as they say, the chickens have come home to roost. Not only that, so in Israel, they've been ramping up domestic production of things, but we don't have raw materials. We buy them from other countries. Last week, I read a story that the countries that we've been ordering these raw materials from are no longer answering their calls. Although we're now buying munitions from India and Serbia. America, of course, has put the brakes on it and has stopped what was a flow of weapons to Israel to a trickle. That's probably the same policy that they had, which was the reason there were only a handful of Secret Service agents protecting former President Trump. But I'm getting off topic, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. So we've got challenges. And again on Shabbat, I mentioned about Golda Meir. There was a commission of inquiry after the Yom Kippur War. She was exonerated, but still resigned because she said, as prime minister of this country, I have to take responsibilities. It happened on my watch. Here's another prediction for you. Bibi Netanyahu is not going to leave office unless it's kicking and screaming. He's Teflon. No responsibility. It's really amazing. Okay, people say to me, Hanoch, I've been reading that there's a tremendous manpower shortage in Israel. It's absolutely true. Our chief of staff said the other day, we need 10,000 soldiers like yesterday. We have mobilized, I think this is going to work, we have mobilized over 300,000 men. Our economy is ground to a halt. We have guys that have been called up for 120 days and then, go home for a few weeks and then have to go back. We have a full complement of close to probably 200,000 troops massed on our northern border. So all of this is going on. And people say, well, don't worry. I heard that the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, are now going to be drafted. Prediction number 3. Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen. They're talking about, we are in desperate need of manpower, and we have a segment of our population that we have allowed since 1977, when Menachem Begin was prime minister, that we have allowed not to have any responsibilities that the other men and women in our country have to face. My grandson Yoni is 17 months old, and he's an Israeli citizen because my daughter is Israeli. And they'll be coming back to Israel in the next 3 to 4 years because they don't want him to go to school in America. No offense. So I'm sitting there, and I'm seeing, first of all, they have demonstrations. They'll have a sit down in front of the light rail going towards the central bus station. And they have signs in English, of course, because that's for the media, the foreign media, that they would rather go to jail than serve in the IDF. I want to open the doors of the light rail, get out, and beat someone to a bloody pulp. My little Yoni, I have to stop calling him my Yoni because I think my daughter is going to feel a little left out. 17 months old. That means in a little more than 16 years, he's going to get his tzav rishon. That's his first notice of when he's going to be called up. If it's good enough for 80% of the population, it's good enough for 100%. Now they're trying to make all kinds of arrangements for the ultra-Orthodox segment. Many of the instructors in the army, like for weapons handling and marksmanship, are women. Well, they can't be around women, because I guess they can't control their passions. People really need to be slapped. Really. I remember seeing a meme saying, there's very little that can't be resolved with a battle axe. I mean, really. I'm up for it. I can't work as a guide. I might as well have some kind of job that's useful. So they're talking about drafting 3,000 out of 12,000 eligible within the age bracket of having 63,000 men sitting around, allegedly studying Torah. I just thought of an expression that we used to use. I cannot say it, but it's basically like who you fooling? It's a little juicier, but it's for another time. So these are the main things swirling around. The other question I get all the time is people want to know, well, if Netanyahu is going to go, who else do you guys have? You know what? State of Israel did fine before Bibi Netanyahu, and will do even better after Bibi Netanyahu. Even in his own party, the Likud party, which I have never voted for, there are other folks. And there are parties that will form before the next election. Next election hasn't been called yet, by the way. Again, remember, in a parliamentary democracy, you can bring down the government and call for new elections. How many times in the last couple of years had y'all wished that you could do that too? All the way through the 3 Obama administrations. I hope you didn't miss that one. Okay. So it's really, so we will have, oh, by the way, in Israel, just so you know, I think I've shared this with you many times. In September will be the 15th anniversary that I had the bracha, the blessing of becoming an Israeli. And in that time, I have voted in Nine national elections. Some of our elections have up to 22 parties running. It is a coalition-based parliamentary democracy. Despite all the challenges that I just laid out, you need to really understand that Israel will be better and stronger than ever before when we come out of this phase. There's absolutely no doubt we are learning powerful and painful lessons. If that calls for me, I'll call them back later. We have to have faith, and we have to contribute. We have to look at ourselves in the mirror every day and say, what can I do today to help that I didn't do before? Now, those are the main questions that I've been getting. But I know you always do, have some ones that are even better. Well, I'm sorry to make you run around there, man.
So, you didn't vote for the Likud party ever?
Ever.
Okay. So,
Do you want to know why? They're not right-wing. Okay. If my dear friend falls over, please promise that you'll pick her up. Okay. In America here, like, oh, Netanyahu and the right-wing government. Other parties are, Likud is a centrist party with right-wing leanings. Yair Lapid, you may have heard the name or not, is a centrist party with left-wing leanings. But it's not like in America we've got, well, they're liberals, they're conservatives. It's not split up that way. But I'm sorry.
So, in your opinion,
Yes.
going forward in the government,
Yes.
what is your vision of the epitome of how to go forward?
Okay. We have to prepare for the major battles with Hezbollah and Iran directly. Just give me a second. There will be parties running. I can't answer that based on the current array of parties. There will be other parties and other individuals. For instance, Naftali Bennett, who had been prime minister for a year, he's talking about coming back to politics, reforming another right-wing coalition of parties. So we'll see. So if it was the same cast of characters now, I don't know what I would do. We need fresh blood. We need fresh blood. We need fresh ideas. We need to retool our military. Now, there's an interesting element that I did not mention, and that's relating to Aliyah, immigration of Jews from outside of Israel coming home to Israel. That's tied in with the fact that anti-Semitism is at a fever pitch worldwide like never before in history. But that doesn't necessarily mean that people in Miami Beach or in Atlanta, Jews, are packing up, planning to go to Israel. We will know by September or September, October. So in other words, when hopefully Pastor Nick won't rescind the invitation for me to come back in January. Pretty please. But we will then be able to look at statistics because most people, most families will go on Aliyah. La'alot means to ascend. It's considered, it's not the word for immigration, but it's like a spiritual ascent to move to Israel. So we'll see, because most people will move in September or August because that's when their kids are out of school, because they want to get to Israel so their kids can begin school. So we're hoping for leadership to arise. There were a number of protest movements against the government right prior to the war, which began on October 7th. So we'll see. I mean, there will be leadership coming from that, without a doubt. We hope. Next, please.
Right here. I probably know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
Now that Benny Gantz and his party have pulled out of the war coalition, is there any possibility that Netanyahu is going to listen to Ben Gvir and Otzma Yehudit?
Absolutely not. Netanyahu will avoid making a decision on everything ranging from what he's having for dinner to let alone policy. We have, every once in a while you'll see an article that'll say, America's trying to understand what Israel's. He's not saying anything. We don't have a clear vision in Israel at all of what the government's policy is on anything. Next, please. Otherwise, my voice is going to go back to Pee Wee Herman. The secret word of the day, no.
What's going on within the country with PLO and Jericho, Bethlehem? Are there still incidents going on individually?
Okay, well, it's interesting that you mentioned the cities of Jericho and Bethlehem, Yericho and Beit Lechem, because neither of those are part of the state of Israel. Those are under the control of the Palestinian Authority. The Oslo Accords back in 1993 gave those cities away. There is ongoing counterterrorism throughout Judea and Samaria. And again, had Israel remained in Gaza past 2005, none of what we're experiencing now could have ever happened, and we would have gone in and done a series of surgical operations, which you see the IDF is doing currently in Judea and Samaria in areas controlled by the so-called Palestinian Authority. By the way, just a quick aside, on Shabbat I got to speak about the group that I'm working with, High on the Har, but one of the other projects that we've begun is going to the Kfarim, the grave sites of important historical figures from the Tanakh, from the Hebrew Bible. Most of those, of course, are in Judea and Samaria. Most of those are under the control of the Palestinian Authority. So you can't freely go into Shechem, what the Arabs mistakenly call Nablus, because the Romans named it Napulus, and since they're not native to our land, they can't pronounce the P, so they pronounce it as a B, Nablus. That's where that came from, because they're not native to our land. Joe picked that up? Okay, excellent. So it's, in fact, I'll miss this trip to the gravesite of Yehoshua, of Joshua. But they have to Kever Yosef in Shechem, and a few other sites. So there are the challenges on the national level, but on the individual level, we all should get involved in the process of the reclamation of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. And it's interesting. There are not a lot of tours that go to Judea and Samaria. The Connect to Israel tour that I do with Mike Clayton, the Beit Tehila tour. Y'all are the exceptions. Do you realize that? I mean, it's really kind of amazing. If you looked at all the biblical stories, excluding Jerusalem, 95% of things, this happened here, it's in Judea and Samaria. It's the biblical heartland. The heart of Israel. The backbone. Boom. Next question, please.
Over here. Okay, actually,
Nathaniel.
Hello. So one thing about is there like a general sense of like, kind of being tired to like acquiescing to, the Palestinians having control of all these territories and not being able to visit them? That's one question. And then another question is...
I'm sorry, was this a twofer? Two for the price of one?
If I can.
Okay, I'm going to let you slide just because of yesterday.
Thank you. And the second question was about going to Israel, and going and seeing the land. Is it safe?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
I'm sorry, that was,
okay.
that was
That's
two.
Good. That's good.
That was two.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's go with the first question. We, High on the Har, and others are working to get this to be an ongoing issue. The largest group, for instance, that deals with the Temple Mount is a group called Biyadenu. Biyadenu means in our hands. And they, like us with High on the Har, of course, we, surprisingly, for Jewish organizations, we actually work with each other. Big shockaroo, mutual respect. With the daily ascents for the 5 days a week that the Temple Mount is open to non-Muslims. That would be Sunday through Thursday. So, yeah, that's a thing. And this is what you're touching upon is what enables me to have the strength every morning to get up. The idea that I can help make a difference. The idea that, when people buy those patches, understand something. For every patch you buy, 5 are donated to IDF soldiers. And there is nothing more cool than walking down the street. The only other cool patch that I've ever seen, I don't know, for those of you on Instagram, you could look this group up. It's called the Hamas Hunting Club. And their patches are a little more risque than ours. But the clothing, it's all a method of support. It's, you could sign up for the newsletter, all those kind of things. Okay. Is Israel safe? Israel is shockingly safe. Honestly, I was a little surprised that Delta and United, came. But then when you look at it, I'll give you an example. For a number of years in America, I lived in a neighborhood in Queens called Rego Park. And that was in an era where nightly there were drive-by shootings in a neighborhood called Jamaica, Queens. Queens is 20-some-odd separate neighborhoods. Jamaica, Flushing, Kew Garden Hills, okay. People who didn't know better would say to me, Hanoch, how do you sleep at night, with all the gunfire? Nowhere close to where I am. Nowhere close. If you go up to the Golan Heights, I can say, it's not a great neighborhood right now. But much of the country, Jerusalem in particular, is absolutely totally safe. It's almost shocking. In Modi'in, where I live, I am midway between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. It's about 35, 38 kilometers in each way. Right in the middle. 9 months of war. 3 alerts where you go into your safe room for 10 minutes. My daughter in Jerusalem has experienced more, but not right now. It's interesting. Everyone was so afraid that, the people in Gaza were going to run out of food and fuel and electricity. But they seem to have enough fuel to keep firing missiles. I don't know why that is. And by the way, supposedly there's shortage of electricity, but everyone's cell phone is fully charged. We heard about the possibilities of famine, but no one's starving. Got to find something else to blame those Jews for. Next question.
Sir, first of all, thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
My question is, you talked a little bit about the numbers of the troops in Israel.
Right.
To try to put that into perspective, what kind of percentage of the population of Israel is
Okay.
that's actually serving on the front lines or supporting?
Okay. Part of those numbers are intentionally kept hazy, so it's like you hear like about or approximately. But we have a Jewish population of 7.25 million. There are minorities that are drafted and serve, particularly the Druze. We have some Christian Arabs. We have some Muslim Israelis, Arab Israelis. By the way, they are not, don't label them Palestinians. They're not. No one is a Palestinian, but they in particular are not Israeli Arabs. And the Bedouin, who are Arab Muslims as well. The government doesn't release what percentage are under arms, but I know from anecdotal experience, talking to people and seeing things, there's a lot of people whose businesses have failed because they're self-employed. And they're serving, in Gaza. I'm not able to work, but no one's firing at me, at least until I get to New York City. Yeah. Well, Chicago, it's interesting when people say, and before the war, I would run into people and say, I'd love to go to Israel, but it's dangerous. In Chicago, they murder 26 people every weekend. I have yet to find someone who says, I'm not going to Chicago. Anyway, so unfortunately, I don't have statistics for you on that. Sure. No. We have a lot more than that. Again, remember that every 18, 19, 20-year-old, right after high school, they just changed the law again, and they've extended the term of service for men to be 3 full years now, 36 months again. It had been reduced down to about 32, less for women. Anything else? Yes, please. What? I'm sorry. Yeah, just wait for the microphone.
Remember his name, the guy with the patch on his eye that gave Gaza away?
No. The guy with the eye patch was a guy by the name of Moshe Dayan.
Oh, yeah.
He was our defense minister in 1967, and he is the one that gave the internal control of the Temple Mount
that's what I meant.
to the Islamic Waqf, the Muslim Religious Council.
I just want to know, is he in politics?
He died several decades ago.
What?
He died many, many years ago.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then we have a question here and then a question there. Oh, it's Pastor Tikva. Hi. I was blinded by the light. Someone should write a song with those lyrics. Yes, please.
One thing about you said today, and then I have another one. You said that no one thought of things that Hamas could do to break through.
They didn't believe it.
October 7th, and one you said was landing on the sea. What did you mean by that?
Okay. They came in 3 ways. By land, by sea. You have to understand where Gaza is situated, north of Gaza and east of Gaza is Israel. So they went up the coast and they landed troops.
I still don't get it. Up the coast of the Mediterranean, north? They went north?
They went north.
And then it was Israel? Until
Yeah.
it was Israel
The
land?
border, Israel's right there.
And they came through without, and then went south?
No.
And they weren't,
They attacked the communities that were north of Gaza,
Okay.
the Jewish communities.
Oh, I know. You had that map on,
Yep.
on Saturday, and it was just real flash
Yeah.
of the cities that were attacked. And I
Yeah.
didn't know
So this
that
is
that
all the
many-
communities around. So they came by air through those motorized gliders. They came right down into the Nova Dance Festival and began slaughtering people.
So it wasn't just south; it was all the way up.
Well, no,
Communities.
not all the way up the coast. No, but in the area what we call Otef Aza, the Gaza envelope.
Okay. So they came down to the Gaza border. Okay. From what you said today, do you think that this could be what the Bible calls the last end time war?
Okay.
Because it sounds so severe, and that you're looking for Messiah. Yeah, it was.
Whoa!
that
Thank you
there.
back there. Who's back
Yeah,
there?
that I had that question on Saturday. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
So you see, they came, right there, right in the sort of gray area. All those
Gray.
communities. I mean, there were a lot more communities, but
Okay.
and you don't see others that are further to the right, further in Israel. Biblical prophecy. That's a great question. That's actually the other thing people want to know. It's not my thing to be in the midst of a situation and say, oh, this must be, second book of Abigail, chapter 3, verse 11. This is what they're talking about. We tend not to do that. When the dust settles, we can look back a little bit, but there's a prophetic element that I totally buy into with this. And I believe this is a sorting out of those who are with Hashem, with God, and those who are not. This is the ultimate sorting out. This is, the prophet Amos speaks of, like a sieve, and not the least grain will fall out. Well, it's interesting because what I'm talking about is these grains are the ones that make the choices. It's like, I'll give you an example. Pastor Nick and I were talking about all the people that I've encountered since 2013 when I've been speaking. And back in 1994, when I first met people say to me, I'm not Jewish, but I think I'm part of Israel. Which was like, I had no idea what that was about. How many people have just walked away from this whole thing? How many people did you sit with over the years here at Beit Tehila that are no longer here? That's the kind of sorting out. Okay, now I think Pastor Tikva, who's been waiting patiently, and I don't want to get on her bad side, I really don't. And I don't have Tim here tonight to protect me. Oh,
You're
how's
safe.
he feel?
Oops. You're safe.
Wow.
You're safe with Tim.
Thus spoke Pastor Tikva.
So my thing is tourism, okay? Because I
Yes.
know, being a part of all the tours and things. So I know when we were there during the October 7th war,
Right.
we, and even Nathan can vouch for it, we felt very safe.
Absolutely.
Even though we heard bombs going off and things like that, But so we didn't want to leave. We were just like hanging out and just seeing what we could do, to
Well, it's interesting within your group. I was getting messages, like from Desiree, Larissa, Erica,
Yeah.
Joy. Everyone wants to know how much room I have in my apartment.
to come hang out, right?
Yeah,
So,
this is like a giant
So-
sleepover for 9 months.
Well, we left them in their little cove that they were at. Tim and I took off and traveled up and down the West Bank.
Right.
And
Judea and Samaria.
yes.
Yes.
And Judea, Samaria. But everyone's saying, "Oh, that's the West Bank," But so anyway, we wanted to stay. We wanted to help.
Sure.
But because of the airline issue, we left when they opened the door for us to leave.
Right.
But really, tourism never did close for
No.
Israel.
No.
Yeah, because they were making it out like, you
No.
need to get out of here now.
Oh.
And we're like,
And no, and you just, well, the issue was most Americans who fly to Israel go on American, United, or Delta. And all of them bugged out.
Yeah.
Now, there's something, it triggered something that you mentioned on Shabbat. There's a new policy, but it's not driven by Israel. Rather, it's driven by the United States. The United States now includes Israel in its visa waiver program, which means that Israelis no longer have to apply for a visa to come and visit the United States of America. However, Americans who never had to do anything now have to fill out an online form. Yeah. It'll cost a few dollars. It's not a big deal. You could fill it out online.
Right.
That's as simple as it is. And then you can go visa-less to Israel or other places too. But Israel's incredibly safe, and tourism has not stopped. It has slowed down.
Yeah. So that's why I really felt that we are to go this year for the same time during the feast Sukkot. But the thing that I noticed is when we stayed, it really ministered to the people. Like we went to Ofra and we went to Etty and Aaron's synagogue prayer meetings, and the people were like amazed. The people were amazed that we didn't run away. And then we went every place we went, Shemuel and Christian Friends for Israel, and they were just amazed. And I'm thinking we went and stayed with Aaron and Etty in their home. So they had a little bit more room than you. So we went and stayed in their home. We had our own room. It was a good choice. We had our own room.
It was a good choice.
So anyway, they were like, I thought, oh, we're burdened at this time, thinking we were a burden because, they're in the middle of a war and they don't want to worry about us. But no, it brought such life and hope and strength. So
we feel so alone.
Yeah.
It's really astounding. It's, and on all levels. And as I never again is now. This is the time right now. Yeah. It's Israel and Jews around the world.
Yes.
And we really do feel alone. So seeing people is fabulous.
So it's safe to go to Israel.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're coming.
Come on down. If you were counting on Secret Service protection, I would be careful.
Hanoch, I was wondering, so there is a U.S. presence in Israel, right? In the land itself.
What kind of presence?
The military. Am I right?
Whoa. Presence in Israel?
Yeah.
Or in the Mediterranean Sea?
Well, I know it's a presence in the Med. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
But isn't there a command, an Israeli command, there in the country itself?
American troops in Israel?
Well, not necessarily. Well, no. American troops, but there isn't an American support or something of that nature there in Israel.
Support? No.
Okay.
Just 1 second. No.
Go ahead.
Now, I would imagine there are American governmental officials, military or otherwise, that are sticking their noses in a lot of places, I would imagine.
Right.
I mean, Blinken, has so many frequent flyer miles. He's in Israel all the time. But no, we don't have an American military presence in Israel. I just 1 second. If you'd have to pass the microphone because I didn't hear that.
Sure.
Well, I thought I could just slide it in there. There's nobody in the U.S. that come over to help y'all
Oh,
Even,
okay,
even when
Okay, so the question was,
nobody.
no one from the U.S. came to help us. We don't want American military personnel. We don't need American military personnel. We would like for America to provide us access to weapons and munitions the same way they do for Ukraine. But no, Israel has never wanted, I mean, what would American military forces do in Israel? We don't need, we certainly don't want American soldiers. We don't want American boots on the ground. We don't need them.
Okay,
Not at
so
all. I think we had, I'm sorry,
yeah.
okay,
So
then we have a question here.
let's say that they're not boots on the ground. So are there not military advisors, or like you said, maybe sticking their nose in? But is there no? I guess my curious question, what I'm leading up to, is with the intelligence that, or you can say oxymoron sometimes with military.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, you know, for me, I kept hearing about the intelligence letdown, per se, internally with,
right,
like you were sharing earlier.
The idea.
But I kind of wonder how much did, for example, our military knew or saw or maybe even shared that wasn't taken serious or something of that nature.
No,
right?
there's not a single report of any American intelligence warning. No.
Tracking.
No.
Okay.
No. This poor woman is waiting patiently. Let's get her over there, and then we'll get the microphone back to you, Tracy. I'm trying to be fair.
I remember hearing, and when October 7th happened, that there were men here in America that had served in Israel. They had Israel citizenship too. They were here in America, and they were reserves, and they went back. To
Israelis
Israel.
from around the world, vacationing in Thailand, hiking in Peru. Yeah, there was El Al did an amazing job of bringing back Israelis who wanted to come for the emergency. Absolutely.
And there were like 50,000 that were here in America
I don't have a
that
number.
went. That's, I think we heard that. That was in the news.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Tracy has a question over here. Don't pick on my friends.
I was just really still
Into the microphone, please.
Okay. I was still kind of interested in, even you said you didn't want any of the Americans over there in Israel to help out the soldiers. Because I know Jeremy Kimball and the Waller boys, they all stood guard around their farms and stuff like that. I'm sure they were exhausted. And it's like, so I'm thinking it's like you wouldn't have wanted any of the U.S. to come at least stand guard, protect the farmers.
Okay, first of all, what you're saying is actually, if it were to happen, is incredibly problematic. Let me explain. We don't need, and we have never asked for, and never want Americans to risk their lives in Israel. Number one. Number two, you're talking about troops that don't speak Hebrew? That's not going to work out well. Number three, non-citizens cannot carry weapons. Okay, meaning Hayovel's volunteers cannot be armed. They can't. Jeremy Gimpel and Ari Abramowitz are Israelis.
Yeah.
They're reservists. So yeah, they were tasked in the same way that Aaron Lipkin was tasked at Ofra to stand guard in his community. But no, we don't want, first of all, America doesn't want it. America has never offered it, and we wouldn't want it. We wouldn't want America. First of all, America's already interfering with, Biden said, the war's over already. You know, declare a ceasefire. You could still go after the head terrorists. I mean, really. So no, we don't, no American troops, please.
We were there at Hayovel, and you had the Israeli army was there on their mountain. Yeah. But Hayovel only offered them food and gave them a place of rest, and they were a blessing, but they couldn't fight. So,
no. The volunteers from Hayovel, who were like amazing people, cannot carry weapons.
What if we brought our own baseball bats?
Next question, please. Casey has a question in the back.
Okay, so I've been trying to think, hello,
Hi, Casey.
how to word this. I wanted to know if there was truth and if Gaza's being truthful with how many hostages, because they make it look like they've been frequently releasing hostages and then it's all the time, and I don't know. I don't think that's true.
Okay. Hostages have not been released frequently, period. There was, several months ago, in November, there was, quote unquote, an exchange, but I got to tell you, exchanging, getting our hostages back and releasing convicted terrorists is shocking. And then, you know, the multiples of terrorists for every person. So recently, we rescued 4 hostages. They were not released. They were not released. Now, here's something interesting. Do you know that the Red Cross has never visited any of our hostages? Do you know that we've never even been given a list of who is actually hostage? Do you know that we have no way of knowing how many of them are still alive? You know, intelligence is talking about maybe 50. We don't know. We don't know. Last count, there was 116 that are still there. But they may be bodies, most of them. We don't know. We don't know at this time. It's a tragedy. Other questions? Anyone? Yes, please. Hang on. Your amplification unit has just arrived.
This is my opinion. The regular people, the citizens of Israel,
Yes.
I believe firmly that if they were allowed to carry guns like our Second Amendment in the United States, there would have been way less death. And I don't see why they don't allow them to do it.
Okay. There are several elements to what you just asked and speculated upon. First of all of the communities around Gaza had weapons, each and every one. In Israel, see, you have a constitutional right to bear arms. That's an American thing. I could be facetious and say we don't even have a constitution, which we don't. But in Israel, it's considered a privilege, not a right. Okay? You cannot go and buy a gun like the father of the guy that tried to assassinate Trump went and bought a long rifle, sniper's rifle for his kid. We can't do that in Israel. It's not an option. Number one. 2, who gets weapons? Who can get a weapon? If you live in an area that our government describes as a security risk, you can get a weapon. So all of those communities in Gaza had weapons. Now, part of the problem is they provided employment for the citizens of Gaza, who sketched and diagrammed each community that they were in. So where the armories were and who was in the Kitat Konenut, the rapid response teams, was all, you know. So, by the way, I don't believe anyone in Gaza is innocent. Not a single one. I saw all the videos as they took in our hostages, as they were beating them, spitting on them, raping them, the whole thing. So to speculate that Israel should make it easier to get weapons or not is just, but they had weapons. The communities in Gaza had weapons. Last question or two. Yes?
I heard a reference to the significance of the now 9-month time frame since the attack. And was that a veiled reference to pregnancy?
That's a big concern that we have. One of the videos, you have to understand, this was the most documented massacre in the history of the world, because Hamas was taking all of this footage with their GoPro cameras. They were thrilled with it. So you see, they got all of our young women spotters, and they said, these are the ones that can become pregnant. Now, a friend of mine was explaining to me that starvation, torture, stress will cause the... We don't have children here, do we? Okay. Will cause the menstrual period to stop. So in theory, maybe they couldn't become pregnant. But it's a tremendous fear in Israel. It's a tremendous fear of what's going to happen now, among all the fears. Last question? Anyone? Oh, we have the last question right near the front.
Did you hear that there were 3 deans, administrators who were put on leave and they would not be coming back on the faculty from Columbia University?
Yeah, I did hear that.
Anti-Semitism?
Yeah, but they were not fired.
But I think they said they won't be coming back, though. They're not going to let them
They
come back.
won't be coming back to their position, but they were not fired from the university. So they still, I mean, what has happened on university campuses is an absolute joke. And it has inspired and encouraged more Jew hatred. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you so much yet again for being here with you. Thank you.